Men with shotguns are going to stand in the church parking lot and prevent black people from coming into the church building. When I first answered the call to ministry, when I was about 21 years old, I never could have imagined that 4 years later I would be told those exact words. But it happened. It's very real. My name is Shane Lambert, also known by a lot of you as George. Nickname. What I'm going to share with you, this is not political, in no way political. I'm not on the Trump train. Not a big fan of some of our president's antics. Not riding with Biden either, so don't get me wrong. I'm not going that direction either, but this is not political. The things I want to share with you are 100% true, and I would put my hand on the Bible and swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about everything I'm going to share with you. I grew up in Alabama, Anniston, Alabama, and I saw racism growing up, but very understated. But where I came from had a really bad racial history. In 1961, 10 years before I was born, a bus, a Freedom Riders bus, was firebombed, and the Freedom Riders who were on the bus were beaten as they came off of the burning bus, right there in my hometown. From 7th through 12th grade, I passed by that site every day on my way to school. So I grew up with that image in my mind, and my parents would talk to me about the things that had happened and how that it was, some of the people who were involved in that were Christian people. It always bothered me to think that anyone who was a Christian could be involved in something like that. But I grew up being taught that, racism is wrong. My mom would always tell me, there's no reason you treat anyone differently because of the color of their skin. I experienced some racism growing up, but I guess a lot of it I was shielded from. Yeah, I heard people use the N-word. I knew people who used the N-word. But I didn't see it a whole lot. So I didn't really think it was a huge problem anymore. But then it got real in my life. And so I think one of the reasons I've felt compelled to make this video is because I've been hearing a lot of murmurs lately about how racism isn't a problem anymore, and we shouldn't be talking about it. We shouldn't have all of this, contention. And let me just say, I think there's a lot of, positive things happening out there, and there's a lot of negative things on all sides. So don't get me wrong about that. But to say that racism is not a problem anymore is kind of burying your head in the sand. I took my first vocational ministry position as a youth pastor in rural Mississippi, and went there, served as a youth pastor, had an incredible ministry, had some great people there that I ministered to, and still some of my fondest memories of my whole life happened with that group of people there, and especially the young people that I got to minister to. And I began to see pretty soon, as after I got there, that racism was real there. Not everybody was racist there, don't get me wrong. But there was a lot of it prevalent. Well, I was fortunate enough to get to, at the high school football games, I was the PA announcer. And so the principal for the high school, he was a really encouraging guy, and he would tell me, if you want to make any announcements about church events or anything like that, you can do it from the press box. So we would have these events after Friday night football games called Fifth Quarter, And we had a gym at our church. We had a basketball court. We had pool table, ping pong table, foosball, all of those things. So we had a really cool place for kids to hang out. So we were going to have fifth quarter, the first football game of the season, 1996. And my last fall there in Mississippi. And so I announced the fifth quarter, and I said all students are encouraged to come and be a part of this. We're going to have free pizza. We'll have basketball, pool, ping pong, foosball, all of those things. So I made the announcements from the press box, and we had one of the biggest crowds we had ever had at a youth event. It was amazing. And probably had about, I think, 20 African Americans who came. And it was great. I mean, we had a wonderful evening. We fed them. We played games. We had a devotional time. We had some people who, some kids who gave their heart to Jesus. It was wonderful. And so I was just praising God for it. Well, apparently, you know how gossip starts spreading, and apparently word got around in the community that we had some rowdiness at our fifth quarter event. I found out, after a while that rowdiness was slang for black people were there. And I even told some people in our church, I said, our senior adult gatherings are more rowdy than our fifth quarter. Because, there was nothing rowdy about what happened there, trust me. And so, Monday night, I have a meeting with my pastor, who, great godly man, always supported me. And he sat down with me. He said, we've got a problem. He said, the older men's Sunday school class, apparently they spent their whole day yesterday during Sunday school talking about how they were going to protect the church. And how at the next fifth quarter, they were going to literally stand in the parking lot with shotguns to make sure that no African Americans, or for that matter, Choctaw Indians, but that was another big racial issue there was a lot of hatred for the Choctaws. And we did have a Choctaw boy who attended the fifth quarter. And so that was like, we're going to stop all of that. That's not going to happen. We're going to stand on the parking lot with guns, and we are going to prevent them from coming into this church building. This really happened. This was not the 1860s or the 1960s. This was 1996. Maybe I'll do another video and describe everything that happened and what we ended up doing and what happened with all of that. But I saw those things, and I literally experienced hatred from some people in that area. There were murmurs of death threats. There were murmurs of crosses being burned in my yard. I've experienced it. And so when I hear someone say that racism is no longer a problem, it really kind of bothers me. And I have some wonderful African American friends who I have one friend in particular. I follow him on Facebook. He's a good friend of mine, and we actually worked side by side for a while. And he and I, we have a lot of differences. We have a lot of disagreements. I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but I love him dearly. And I've been following him on Facebook. I'm too old to do the other things, Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat and all those things. But I have followed him on Facebook, and he's been going live on Facebook several times a day. He's been participating in peaceful protests in Richmond, Virginia for a while now. Now, again, I don't agree with him on everything. He's calling for defunding the cops, and I I don't believe that's an answer at all. We definitely don't need to defund police. We need to get rid of bad cops. But I don't agree with that. So I'm not saying I agree with everything, and he acknowledges that. He knows that we don't agree on everything. But as I've watched his videos, and I've seen literally his eyes water at the things that he's experienced, and the pain that's in his voice is real. It's real. And so I think it's important that we don't just turn a blind eye and bury our head in the sand and assume that, those are all problems from the 1860s and the 1960s. It's not. We do need to talk to each other. We need to listen to each other. And I think that we need more of that. I don't think there's enough listening to one another and hearing each other out. People will say, well, yeah, but your experience was, 1996. That was, 24 years ago? That doesn't apply to today. Well, it's still there. Racism's still there. Yeah, we've come a long way. We sure have, from the 1860s and from the 1960s, but there's still more work to be done. The last church I pastored, I was there till 2011, and had wonderful ministry there, wonderful people there. But after all I have been through, I would preach pretty hard against racism. And it was a church that was, while I was there, we had 125-year, we passed the 125-year mark for that church. So this church had been there a long time in the South, in Alabama. And to best of my knowledge, we baptized the first African-American in that church while I was there. We had a interracial couple, married couple, who were members of the church. So we saw some incredible things happen and some great breakthroughs happen. But I know not everybody loved all of those things. But I had preached so hard against racism that, nobody would really speak up against it, and they knew how I felt. But I did have a deacon tell me one time that I needed to cut it out. I needed to quit talking about it because people were leaving the church, and we did have people leave the church because I was so. I preached against racism because I preach against sin, and racism is sin. I also one time made the statement from the pulpit. I said, if you want to see this pastor's blood boil, just tell me a racist joke. And I had a deacon reprimand me for making that statement. So we lost people, but we gained people. And I hated to see people leave. I loved them dearly. But, if they couldn't agree with me, they were just going to move on, I guess. We just celebrated the 4th of July. And, one of the big things about the 4th of July is we're celebrating one of our founding documents. And in that document, it begins by stating that all men are created equal. So if we really believe all men are created equal, then we have to also believe that black lives are equal. Native American lives are equal. Latino lives are equal. Substitute whatever ethnicity or racial, whatever race you want to put into there. The only way all men are going to be created equal is that if we really believe that, then we have to believe that that includes persons of color. So, I guess the reason I'm sharing this today is because there's a huge burden on my heart for our nation. I want to see reconciliation take place. I want to see, I do want to see racism become a thing of the past. I really want that. But we'll never see that happen if we refuse to acknowledge that it still exists, because it does. So just hear my heart today when I say, open your eyes and understand that there's still problems. We still have a long way to go. But if we will stop shouting at each other and listen to each other and start seeking to understand, not necessarily agree with each other all the time. I have white friends and black friends that I agree with, and white friends and black friends that I disagree with. But it doesn't matter whether we disagree or not. We agree to disagree, and we love each other. And we got to get back to the thing where we got to get past this thing where if I disagree with you, then, I'm going to destroy you. Or if you disagree with me, you're going to destroy me. We need to move past that. So, anyway, I'm Shane George Lambert, and that's my story.